still not very helpful though, and it still doesn't fit in with the aesthetics of our site, very basic though they may be. For instance, here we have an example of a problem that has been caused by the user not entering the right kind of data. In this case, the email address that they entered was an invalid email. We have the whoops header and we have a hyperlink at the bottom here. Now we could add all of this simply into here as a very long literal string, but we'd be better off including it as a function at the end of our script here, or at the beginning. We can put the function to wherever we like, but the reason why it would be much better as a function is that we're going to be repeating this data several times wherever we want to add one of these possible error messages that are going to pop up. So let's call our function fail. It's going to take one argument, string variable, message, which is going to consist of our error message, and what it's going to do is essentially copy this text. So let's copy this out of here and pop it down here. Now at the moment this is written as HTML. The way we output it before, earlier in the script, was to use the close PHP tag and then simply put this all in as HTML. However, we're going to be replacing this with our string variable message. So it's going to look confusing if we have to pop back into PHP and say echo message, go back in. That's a possible way of doing it, but it might be simpler and clearer if we simply echo each of these parts here to make it absolutely clear what our function is doing. So we're simply going to put our message there with a concatenation operator and then our line break, and then let's say we put this on a separate line just to keep it simple, and we're just going to put a double quotes around that and curly brackets here. The only other thing we need to do is replace these double quotes with single quotes for reasons I've explained before, which are essentially that this counts as an opening string. The next double quote that PHP comes across is going to be counted as the closing quote mark. So we need a single quote mark to differentiate. Let's save our script. We have to also add the function to the die command up here. Now there's our fail function, and it sits here as the argument to the die command. Let's save our script, and we're going to try this on the browser. We're going to resubmit our data with the deliberate error still in the script, and we're going to see what happens. As we can see, this is a much better system because it remains consistent with what will happen if, for instance, we enter an invalid email address. If we just put in something that's obviously not an email address, we're going to get something very similar as our error message. So although to us there is an obvious differentiation between an error that's generated by PHP and an error that's generated by our script itself, our users don't need to know about that distinction, and it will in fact confuse them more if they're coming across sudden ugly errors like the ones we found before. So we can see that this is a much better way of dealing with the errors that may pop up within our PHP scripts. We can also replace these errors here, or these messages here, with the fail function. And since every time we use our fail, we're also going to want to exit the script, we could also enter that exit as part of our fail function, which is not going to be used when we use it as part of our die command, but it is going to be used when, for instance, we're checking to make sure all the fields are filled in, or checking to see that the email is valid. So again, we can use the please enter a valid address, and we're going to lose this little bit of HTML, and as we can see, much clearer, more concise script, no repetition, by using a function. And we can use that function both for validation like this and for error checking like this down here. We're going to look at another more comprehensive way of dealing with errors in our next movie.